Welcome everyone to today's webinar. We generally do a couple of webinars a month. Beginning of the month, sometimes we have a general sales overview webinar for those people that are either very new to ClubExpress or are considering ClubExpress as an association management solution. So today is a webinar about a new feature that's been added to ClubExpress over the last couple of weeks. And it's something that members and the administrators have been asking for quite a while. And this is enabling a waitlist for events. And Samantha is going to do a demonstration of that to give you an idea what the new features are like. But let's take care of a little bit of housekeeping first. All the phones and microphones are muted. So if you have questions, please enter them into the chat window. And at the end of the demonstration, we'll revisit the questions and see if there's any questions that have not yet been answered. And this is particularly useful for those of you who will be watching this as a recording. And speaking of recordings, the recordings are available on clubexpress.com. So if you go to clubexpress.com and click on the Cool Stuff link, and then on the left side of the page, click on the Webinars tab, you'll see that there is a list of the upcoming webinars and of the recently recorded webinars. Similarly, there is a link on the Tutorials tab for recently published tutorial videos. Now, all of our videos are actually housed on YouTube. And so if you go to YouTube, and if you click on the subscribe button, you can optionally get notified of all new content. So this is an easy way to keep up with new webinars and new tutorials and things like that. And one last thing, if you're using ClubExpress, and particularly if ClubExpress is working really well for you and your organization, we'd appreciate it if you go to clubexpress.com/reviews and click on one of these review sites and leave a review so that other people who are evaluating association management solutions can have the benefit of your experience. So I'm going to turn it over to Samantha. So Samantha, can you share your screen, please?
Thanks everyone for joining us today. Obviously by the turnout, you all are really excited about our new event waitlist feature. We just announced waitlisting as part of our 9.3 update. If you're interested in what else we announced, the webinar that we hosted to talk about the update is on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. Today we're just going to be focusing on our waitlisting feature. So what it is, what it isn't, how you actually create a waitlist, and what you can do with the waitlist once you've actually made it. So what is the waitlist? The waitlist is available for single and multi-activity events, and it's open to members and non-members depending on who you're allowing to register for your event. It grants priority access to users on the waitlist in order for them to register for an event that reaches capacity. So what that means is once the waitlist is activated, people who are not on the waitlist can't register for that event. Only people on the waitlist can register for it. And the waitlist activates when the event, or in the case of a multi-activity event, when the activity capacity is filled. So at that point, users no longer see a button that says register. It says add me to the waitlist. The waitlist does not automatically register users on the waitlist for the event. And we'll go through that in a bit. Waitlisted users need to be notified. Once they're notified, they get a special link and they register after they've been notified, either with a time limit or not. And of course, we'll go through all of that today. The waitlist also does not automatically notify users on the waitlist. Administrators have to go in and notify waitlist users. You can notify one user at a time or everyone, and you can notify them either out of order or in the order in which they added themselves to the waitlist. So in today's demonstration, we're going to create a waitlist in a single activity event. We're going to take a look at what administrators can do with that waitlist, how you manage it, how you add or remove people to the waitlist, how you notify people on the waitlist, and creating a waitlist in a multiple activity event because it's a little bit different than creating a waitlist in a single activity event. So first up, we're going to create a waitlist for a single activity event. Now, I've gone ahead and created an event within our demo club just to get some of the details in there, and that way I can show you exactly what you're doing without having to waste time creating the event. So I'm logged in to our Northwest Balloon Club. It's our demo club as Martin Smith. Martin Smith is the administrator. I'm going to go ahead and navigate to our calendar and click the edit icon on the flyout menu, which is just another way that you can access the back end of the event calendar or the events manager. And I'm going to look for some of the events that I've already created. So for 4th of July, Martin decided that he wants to ask people to come out on his boat to see fireworks. And so he can only have a couple of people on his boat at a time. So capacity is really limited. And he wants to give everyone the chance to be able to go. And if someone ends up registering for this boat ride and then has subsequent plans, they'd cancel their registration and then people on the wait list can actually get on the boat. So for those of you who've actually created an event before, you're very familiar with our event creation wizard and all of the panels that go into creating an event. So the panel that you would focus on when you want to enable a wait list is registration fees and attendance tracking. So let's go ahead and see what we configure when we're in registration and fees. First off, in order to use the waitlist feature, there are a couple of things that you need to make sure are set. Registration for the event needs to be required. So the first option that you have within your window is registration. Make sure that's set to required. And the second thing that you need to have is you need to have an event capacity set. Now, you don't necessarily need to show the capacity or show how many slots are available, but you do have to have a capacity set. Without either of those items, the waitlist will not activate. So it makes sense logically. The system won't know that event capacity is filled unless people are actually registering for the event. And they may not register if you don't make registration required. So once capacity is set and you enter in a number of people that are able to register for that event, in this case, we're only allowing 2 people to register for the boat ride. It's a very exclusive boat ride. Then you have the option to create your wait list, which is right under capacity. Again, we're in the registration and fees tab of the event creation wizard. So when I select the option to create a wait list, 2 additional fields will appear for me. The first field is the capacity of the waitlist itself. This is different from the capacity of the event. The capacity of the event is how many people I'm allowing to be on this boat. The capacity of the waitlist is how many people am I allowing to sign themselves up for the waitlist. Now, I've set this to 2. Once the waitlist reaches capacity, anyone who visits the event after the fact will see a button that says the waitlist itself is full. Not only will they not be able to register for the event because capacity is full, they won't be able to add themselves to a wait list. Now, for any number of reasons, you might want a capacity on your wait list. You could set the capacity to a much higher number just in case you tend to have a lot of event cancellations. You can add a lot more people to your wait list. And the next field is waitlist hours. There was some confusion in our original webinar when we talked about this particular field. It is not the amount of time that the waitlist is active. What it is the amount of time that a user has after they've been notified that they can register to actually register for that particular event. So for example, if I am on a wait list for this particular boat ride and there is a cancellation, the administrator, Martin Smith, might notify me at 6 in the morning, 6 a.m., to say that a registration spot has opened. I then have 4 hours to go in and register for that particular event before the link that I received expires. So once I've configured my wait list, I've stated how many people I want to be on the wait list and how many hours they have to actually register.
Samantha,
I can move. Yes.
Just before you go past that, the question is there an upper limit to the maximum count on the wait list?
So the maximum number of people that you can have on the wait list would be 99. So now I'm going to save my changes. And now when I look at registration fees and attendance tracking for this particular event, I see all of the information that I configured in registration, and I also see a little bit of a status message under my waitlist section. So there are a handful of statuses that you'll actually see when you're creating your waitlist. So disabled would mean it's the default setting when you're creating a new event. Disabled means that there is no waitlist. It has not been activated. You're not using the feature. Enabled but not active means that the waitlist feature has been enabled for the event, which we just saw, but it hasn't been activated yet because event capacity isn't filled. We don't have anyone who's registered for this event just yet. The next status would be enabled and active, which means that not only are we using the waitlist, but registrant capacity has filled, so now the waitlist is active. And then the last status that you might see is full, meaning that the waitlist capacity is actually filled. So what we're going to do now is take a look at this particular event from the front end. And we can see that you have the ability to register right away. We don't have any registrants listed. So as an administrator, as Martin Smith, it's my boat, so I'm going to go ahead and register. Unfortunately, that means that I'm going to take up a spot on my very small and exclusive boat. And Alan is going to do me a favor and also register Jenny Cho. Jenny Cho is an active member of the Northwest Balloon Club, and she's going to go ahead and also sign up for a spot on Martin's boat. So Martin's going to go ahead and register himself. It's a free event and complete registration. So now Martin Smith has been registered, and let's go ahead and see if Jenny registered just yet. And it looks like she did. So I am in the registration manager, and I can see that Martin Smith has registered, Jenny Cho has registered. Now if we go back into the 4th of July boat ride, in our admin toolbar, which when you've created an event, you're probably very familiar with it, there's a new button that appears if you are using the waitlist feature. And it's the waitlist icon. It looks like a calendar with a little information icon next to it. And if you hover over it, you can see that it does say waitlist. Now, if we look at registration fees and attendance tracking, we talked about some of those waitlist statuses that we might see. Currently now, the waitlist status is enabled and active. So let's take a look at what our waitlist looks like right now. So without anyone on our waitlist, it's active. So as an administrator, I have the ability to add a member or a non-member to the waitlist. Now, again, I have the ability to add non-members simply because I have configured the event to accept registration from non-members as well. So when I add a member or a non-member to the waitlist, all I do is select a member using the member selector that you see on many other parts of your website. Now, another way that people can add themselves to the waitlist is just by a member logging into the site and going ahead and adding themselves to a waitlist. So I am logged in another browser as Manny Diaz. Manny Diaz, another active member of the Northwest Balloon Club. He heard about this particular boating event. He was really interested, really excited about it. He knows that Martin's boat is a really fantastic boat. He wants to go ahead and register for that 4th of July boat ride. Well, he was a little too slow. And now at the top right-hand corner where it normally says register for the event or register now, whatever you've configured your button to say, it says add me to waitlist. Now, Manny is already logged in, so the system recognizes all of his information, and all he has to do is click Add Me to the Waitlist. Now he's on the waitlist, but he also has the ability to remove himself from the waitlist to free up space for that. If he realizes that he has other plans that day, he doesn't need to wait for a ride on Martin's boat, he can remove himself from the waitlist at any time. So now let's go back into the Waitlist Manager. Again, I'm still logged in as Martin Smith, just in another browser. I am going to refresh this page to see that I do show that Manny Diaz is currently on our waitlist. So now when you're looking at the Waitlist Manager, we of course see that we can add members and non-members. We can opt to delete the entire waitlist. We can remove all of the waitlist entries. And we can even manage individual members of the waitlist. So in the Maintain column, we have a couple of options. We can view that member's profile. Maybe Martin isn't super familiar with who Manny is and he's not really sure if he even wants him on his boat. And then we also have the ability to remove members from the wait list. In the status column, just like there are a handful of statuses that are applied to the waitlist itself, there are some statuses that are applied to waitlisted members and non-members. So the first status that you'll always see is waitlisted. It means that the user was just added to the waitlist. The next status that you might see is send notification, meaning the user hasn't been notified by email just yet, but that there is a registration spot open. Once you do notify a user, which we'll go through shortly, the status would change to notified, stating that they actually have been notified via email. If they don't act on their notification and they don't register, their status changes to time expired, meaning that the time limit that you specified, in this case we specified 4 hours, passed and the user did not register. There are 2 other statuses. Removed by user. So if Manny went ahead and removed himself from that particular waitlist, it would state removed by user. And then removed by admin would be when an administrator has removed them from the waitlist itself. So now I'm going to go back into the 4th of July boat ride as an administrator again. And let's say that Jenny Cho called up Martin and said, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it on your boat. Go ahead and cancel my registration and we'll give someone else a chance to register for that particular event. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel Jenny Cho's registration. Now, I won't get into too much detail, but obviously if you've created events before and you've been working with our event calendar, you do know that members have the ability to cancel their own registrations for events. I'm just canceling this on behalf of Jenny currently. I'm going to cancel her registration. We won't send her an email. So now I have a spot open in my registration. So let's go back into the waitlist and see what that changes. I'm again going into the waitlist icon in our admin toolbar. And now you see we have a handful of extra options that were not there before. So because the waitlist is now coming into play, we decide what we want to do, how we want to notify people. So the first thing that you can do is you can notify everyone all at one time. That just means that every single person on the wait list, whether it's 1 person or 50 people, gets an email stating that there is a spot for registration open. So you can essentially make it a free-for-all. Even if you only have 1 or 2 spots open in your event, maybe you just want to send a notification out to everyone so it's fair, and whoever gets there first gets to actually register for the particular event. The next option that you have is to notify the next waitlist user, which just goes in order. So the order in which the users added themselves to the waitlist is the order in which you're going to notify them. Or you can pick and choose who you'd like to notify. Maybe you have 5 or 6 people on the list and you might be playing favorites. You can notify people individually by pressing this email button. So I'm going to go ahead and send a notification to this user, again, just pressing that email icon. And it states that the user has been officially notified. Now, Manny's status has changed to notified.
Samantha, there was a question, actually a couple of questions that are coming up. We'll queue them up for a little bit. But one of the questions is the event coordinator notified when it reaches capacity and when people are put onto the waiting list?
No, when people add themselves to the waitlist, yes, but not when the event reaches capacity. So essentially they'd know that the event was at capacity if people were adding themselves to the waitlist.
Okay.
So we've notified Manny that he has the ability now to register himself. I went ahead and added my own email address to this so you can see what that email actually looks like, and I'm just waiting for it to come through. Now, the thing to note about users who are sitting on the waitlist, the spot has opened, the administrator has sent a notification to the user, and now the user has the opportunity to register themselves. So a couple of things. Just because a spot opened up for registration, that does not mean that anyone can just go in and register for the event. So even if you're on the wait list, you can't just go in and register for the event. When you're notified, in your notification email, there's a special link that gets included that takes you right to the registration page for that event. So the reason for that is we didn't want people to sort of cut in line and be able to register themselves. If they happen to be looking at the boat ride after a spot has opened up, they wouldn't be able to just sort of zoom in and take that registration spot from someone who's been sitting on the wait list for a couple of weeks. Even if the person that's going to register is Manny Diaz, he wouldn't be able to access that particular item. So let's go ahead and show that. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page. I'm logged in as Manny Diaz. He's on the wait list, and we know that a spot opened up, but he still doesn't have the ability to register himself. He's waiting for that email to come through to state that he can now register for that particular event. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that email looks like. So this is an email that came from the Northwest Balloon Club, and it's to Manny Diaz, noting that a spot has opened up. This is a system email that, of course, you can make changes to. Noting that a spot has opened up, he has the opportunity to register for the event or to remove himself from the wait list. If he gets the email and he realizes that he made plans already for that day, he can remove himself from the wait list. At that point, the administrator would see that the user removed himself from the waitlist, and they can just go back down the line and start notifying other people. Or he can decide to go ahead and register.
There was a question about the 4 hours. The question was it 4 hours from the time the notification was sent or 4 hours from the time the notification was read? And I think it's 4 hours from the time the notification was sent.
Yes, that's correct. 4 hours from the time the notification was sent. So I know that some people might be concerned that not all of your members actually check their email. But one of the things that we talked about in our 9.3 webinar was the ability to notify waitlisted users via text message. So that is something that's on our list of things to do. So currently, you are only able to notify waitlisted users via email, and it is from the time that the email was actually sent. So we went through creating a waitlist for single activity events. Essentially, you're just visiting the registration and fees page. You're setting registration to required, setting an event capacity, setting a waitlist capacity, and a waitlist notification time limit. And then we also went through the tools that you have to manage your waitlist. We went through waitlist statuses, the waitlisted statuses for both members and non-members, removing people from a wait list, the ability to add people to a wait list, and then how you go about notifying members or non-members on that particular wait list. So next up, we're going to create a wait list for a multi-activity event.
Before we jump into that, one of the questions is there a declined status for a waitlisted user to indicate that that person declined to register for the event versus letting the time expire?
So you don't decline to register for the event. You either register for the event, you let it expire, or you remove yourself from the wait list. At which point, the only things that would change about the status of Manny would be, right now he's been notified. If he registers for the event, he gets removed from the wait list, and then he is a registrant. If he chooses to do nothing, his status will change at some point to time expired. Or if he's proactive and he removes himself from the wait list, his status would change to removed by user. So there is no decline function. It is simply registering, not registering, or removing them from the wait list.
All right. So the next question is just to clarify, who exactly gets the waitlist notification? There are two notifications. One is that someone has been put on the wait list, and the other is that you're notifying someone that the registration is available from the wait list. So the event coordinator, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And an event coordinator, a regular event coordinator, not necessarily a module coordinator, can they add a member to the wait list? Yes, an event coordinator and admins can both manage this waitlist manager here. And I think there was still a little confusion about what the event registration page looks like when one person has canceled. So if it had reached capacity and there are people on the wait list, it still shows as full. It doesn't show that somebody else can just sneak in and say, hey, we got people on the wait list. Nobody's grabbed it yet. So it still shows as full. It doesn't show that anything is available until the wait list is cleared, at which point, if there are spots that are available, then becomes visible. It would be inappropriate for you to have people sitting on the wait list and then people say, oh, look, there's 3 spots. And now they're going to start asking the administrators for, hey, get me in before these other people. That's the reason that's not done that way.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have 1 or 2 others, I think. Is there a way for a member to see all of the events where they are on the wait list? So if they're on wait list on multiple events, I don't know that there's any way to do that.
The reports that are available would be just per event. There isn't a way to pull a report that states what waitlist a member is currently sitting on for all events. They can see their event registration history, but there isn't a way to pull a report by member. That would be something that whoever asked that question could submit to ideas@clubexpress.com, a request for that report.
Okay, next question is, what email address is used to send the emails to those on the wait list? This would be, I guess, the regular email address that they get all notifications and blast emails to.
That's correct, yes.
All right, so much for those couple of questions. We'll add some more questions at the end.
All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is take a look at a multi-activity event and how the waitlist configuration differs when you're setting up a multi-activity event. So again, I'm going to go into my calendar. I'm going to go into the event manager. And I have a multiple activity event that I've already gone through and created, and I'm just going to take a look at those panels that you need to touch in order to set up the waitlist. Now, in case you are wondering more questions about setting up events, more questions about setting up multiple activity events, we're actually going through that in a webinar in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. But for now, I'm just going to show you how the waitlist is actually configured. So previously, we were going to registration fees and attendance tracking in order to configure our waitlist. So let's take a look at what that screen looks like now when we're in a multiple activity event. So we have registration for the event set to required, but instead of being able to set capacity for the event, all we see is whether or not we want to create a waitlist, the number of people that can sit on the waitlist, and the number of hours, again, that the person has to register themselves once they've been notified. So the fact that a waitlist exists is configured in registration and fees. But when you're actually determining which activities qualify for a waitlist, you're doing that at the activity level. So let's go to our activities and items page. And we see that for this particular fall fly-in weekend, I've just added a few activities for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I have currently 2 people registered for each. Now, within each activity, as you're aware, if you've created multiple activity events, the capacity for that is set at the activity level. It's not set for the entire event. For example, if you're having a convention or a conference for your organization, capacity for the entire conference might be very large. But you might have breakout sessions, seminars, or small courses during the day where the capacity is maybe only 20 to 50 people. So again, capacity is going to be set at the activity level. And of course, if you've configured multiple activity events before, you know that you can set registration and fees as well as who can actually register for that event within each activity. So let's take a look at breakfast. I'm going to go into registration and fees for the breakfast activity. So at the very top, I've stated that the activity isn't selected during registration, so a user can decide to select it or not. And then we set our capacity. You have to set the capacity for the activity in order to allow it to be included in your waitlist. So for this particular activity, I set capacity to 2, and I've elected to include it in the waitlist. Now, when you're selecting activities, you don't have to include every activity in your multiple activity event in the waitlist. You can pick and choose. Perhaps the capacity is limited for breakfast and lunch, but dinner is open to everyone. You don't have to include all activities, but if you do include activities in your waitlist item, all of the activities that you have included must be filled in order for the waitlist to be activated. So for example, in my breakfast, lunch, and dinner activity set, I've opened the waitlist for all 3 of them. If I only have people registering for breakfast and lunch, but dinner is still wide open, the waitlist will not activate until all the activities which are included in the waitlist have been filled. And adding yourself to the waitlist works in the same way. But the thing to note about multiple activity events is that when a user is adding themselves to the waitlist for that event, they're adding themselves to the full event. They don't have the option to waitlist themselves for specific activities. So let's take a look at the event calendar. And I'm going to go ahead and navigate to my fall fly-in weekend. I'm logged in as Manny Diaz. So now Manny can see that the capacity for that event is filled. We saw on our admin screen that we did have 2 registrants for each activity. He can still add himself to the waitlist, and even if he scrolls through the items, he can see that the capacity is filled. So I'm going to go ahead and add him to the waitlist, and you can see that he just has the ability to add himself to the waitlist for the event itself. He doesn't have the ability to select which activities he'd like to be waitlisted for. Now, of course, when he registers for that particular event, he can choose to only register for certain activities, but he can't choose which activities he wants to be waitlisted for. And so now let's go back into our admin section here. And we're still in the admin side of our fall fly-in weekend. And we can go ahead and take a look at the waitlist. And we can see that Manny Diaz is currently listed on the waitlist for that particular event. I can still add members and non-members. I can still manage the waitlist in the exact same way that I would for a single activity event. But the only difference is where you're configuring the waitlist. Again, it's configured at the individual activity level. You enable it for the full event, configure it at the activity level, and users add themselves to the waitlist for the event, not for the activity. Alan, how are we doing on questions regarding waitlists?
Well, we've got a couple. There were some notes that I got from one of our developers here that said waitlist works for registration types required, required by close date, and recommended.
Okay.
So that's number 1. There was a question, can the event coordinator register a person on the waitlist directly without sending the email? And apparently this can be done not here, but back to the registration manager. If there's a slot open as an admin, you can drop them into the slot, but then you'd have to go and just manually take them off of the waitlist. I don't think it automatically switches.
Correct, yes.
Switches over to the waitlist. There are some people that seem to want to have the ability to waitlist for particular items, but that's not currently a feature. I guess it would be to say, okay, I'm waitlisted for the event, but if I'm trying to register for a dinner and the dinner or the lunch is filled up, how do I get on the wait list just for that activity? I don't think that that is currently a feature, but it is something that we will pass on to the development team. It says, if waitlists are enabled, is it across all future events or is it limited to certain interest groups? It's not limited to particular events or interest groups at all. It is on an event by event basis.
Correct, yes. Now, the things that you can actually configure across the board would be, if we go back into our event manager and we take a look at our event defaults, if we scroll, let's see, if we scroll to registrations where you're configuring your default options, or as I like to call them, your frequently used options, you can configure the number of hours that you generally want people to have for that notification. Now, I call these frequently used options because just because you've created 4 hours as the default, it does not mean that you can't edit that on an event by event basis. But if you, for the most part, 9 times out of 10, want your waitlist hours to be 4, you can save yourself a couple of seconds by making 4 the default in your event default options.
There was a question about, is an administrator notified when somebody cancels their registration, in effect opening up a slot? And the admins are notified anytime somebody registers and somebody cancels. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So there's nothing specific about waitlists for that. Now, the thing that I think people really need some clarity on is when you're an administrator and you process somebody on the waitlist, you send a notification to that person on the waitlist. What they're getting is a special link, not to the normal registration page. The normal registration page will not have a register link on it because it's full and
That's
there's
correct.
people pending. So this is a special link. And one of the questions was, well, if people didn't respond in time, can you just send them out the link again? Can you send them a second notice?
Yes.
And yes, by clicking on their icon next to the name or one of the other top icons for Notify Everybody, you can do that. Someone is asking, can you just go through and show how you access the defaults again?
Sure. Well, one thing I wanted to show was I created this event yesterday and notified a couple of people on the wait list. This is for a separate summer harbor cruise. Martin was very generous with his boat this summer. So neither of these users on the wait list actually went ahead and registered. So it states that their time is expired. So the separate icon that we have is to reactivate the user. So if I go ahead and reactivate this user and I throw them back on the wait list, I then have the option to email them one more time. So they're back to waitlisted. I can send one more email. They'll have another chance to go ahead and register for that event. And at that point, I mean, you can keep renewing and sending the notification as many times as you need to.
There's a question here saying, can the trip leader, which I imagine is the event coordinator or multiple event coordinators, can they also receive notifications about the wait list so that the administrator doesn't have to pass that information on?
That I do not know.
All right, well, we will see if we can find out.
So the default options when you're in the Events Manager would be under Configure Event Defaults. It's the last option in the Configure menu. And these are your default options. Again, I call these frequently used options because they are essentially time savers. Just because you set something here doesn't mean that you can't change it on an event by event basis. But what you should be using the event defaults would be to save yourself a few seconds. If 9 times out of 10, you're creating an event that has the exact same features, you can create those in defaults. That way you don't really need to edit them very often when you're creating individual events. So within registrations, the defaults thing that you can actually set would be the number of hours that that user has to actually register themselves after they get that email.
Yeah, so this is just so when you say, I want to have a wait list, it just puts the number 4 into the wait list hours rather than you having to guess what you normally want to use. In virtually all of our systems, the defaults are just filling in stuff for you so that you don't have to remember what you use.
Did we get any fast questions at the end here?
So going back to adding a non-member to a wait list, must the person already be in the non-member database, or can we add them using that button and then have them added to the non-member database?
They absolutely do not necessarily need to be in the non-member database. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of our activities. So adding a non-member to the database, you can of course search in the non-member database, and this is the same thing that a non-member can do for themselves. Even when registering for an event, when doing things on your website, non-members can search for themselves in the database if they've interacted with your website before. You can search for a non-member that might already be in your database. Otherwise, they're just prompted to enter in their contact information, which of course is added to your non-member database.
So there is a question here that said, to get waitlist notifications, do you have to set your account to get all notifications? Meaning, if you have set your privacy options, don't send me emails, you would still get things like renewal notices and things like that, but you wouldn't get bulk emails from the club. In this case, I think this would be considered a system an important email. Person is saying, I'm still trying to understand who gets notified when capacity is reached. Nobody gets notified when capacity is reached. However, the coordinators, event coordinators, would be the person that would get a notification that someone has been added to the wait list. But the question is, if someone's a general administrator of the site and really doesn't have anything to do with particular events, do they still get notifications? Is there a way of saying, hey, I'm an admin, but I don't want to get a notification every time somebody registers for an event?
I don't know that either.
And as far as the trip leader questions, the question is, can the trip leader or the event coordinator also receive the wait list so the administrator does not have to pass that info on? Looks like that is a feature enhancement, and it has been logged. So we have another couple of webinars coming up. First Wednesday of next month, we have a general overview. And then on the second Wednesday of June, Samantha's going to do a demonstration how to set up a basic multi-activity event, because there's a whole lot of things that you can do. There's a whole lot of flexibility, and it's been a while since we've done anything like this. So this would be a good opportunity for people to come in and see what's available and see how you might want to leverage things you're not leveraging at the moment. So Samantha, have anything else?
I do not. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to attend the webinar. I hope that everyone is just as excited about the waitlist feature as I am.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, feel free to give our customer success team a call. Either email them at support@clubexpress.com or give them a call. The number is on the Contact Us page at the bottom of your website, at the very bottom, and they'll be happy to take a look at it for you and answer your questions and add your ideas and things like that. People in the chat are saying that this is a great addition, it's been very helpful, and that this is going to save them a lot of time. So I appreciate everybody coming, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Bye, everyone.